The HOA told me to move my boat, claiming it broke their rules. What they didn't know? I actually owned the lake they were using for their fishing club, so I evicted them and turned the entire neighborhood against their power trip. Move your boat immediately or face fines. That was the note stuck on my front door in bold red letters. At first, I thought it was a joke. My boat had been docked peacefully on the lake for months. It wasn't in anyone's way. I live in a quiet, picturesque neighborhood, and my home sits right at the edge of the lake. An amazing view, peaceful mornings, and weekend fishing trips. Until the HOA stepped in. I didn't think much of the note until I got a second one, this time with a $500 fine attached. The Homeowners Association was dead serious. They claimed my boat was violating community aesthetics and blocking lake access for the fishing club. But here's the twist. They had no idea who really owned the lake. Let's rewind. When I bought this property 2 years ago, I spent months researching. The listing mentioned the house came with private lakefront ownership. I dug deeper and found out that the deed included a majority share of the lake, around 60% of it to be exact. The lake was split among a few properties, and mine happened to cover the largest portion, including the central area where my boat was docked. This wasn't just some community access water. I legally owned most of it. I didn't say anything at first, thinking it didn't really matter. The lake had always been shared peacefully. That is, until the HOA decided to make it their personal playground and tried to throw their weight around. One Saturday morning, I saw a group of men, members of the HOA's fishing club, near my dock. They were setting up chairs, tents, even grilling equipment, right on my shoreline. I walked out and politely told them they were on private property and needed to move. That's when one of them, Steve, an HOA board member, laughed and said, "This is community land. You don't own the lake, buddy. Read your bylaws." I smiled and responded, "I've read the bylaws. Have you read the county property records?" That shut him up for a second, but they still refused to leave. So I took the next step. I contacted my attorney, who confirmed exactly what I already knew. The lake rights were mine, legally recorded and updated. He helped me send a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA and the fishing club. The letter stated that any further unauthorized use of my portion of the lake would be considered trespassing. Within 48 hours, the HOA president called me. She sounded nervous and tried to backpedal, saying there must have been confusion and that the lake was shared by tradition. I told her traditions don't override deeds and titles. She then asked if I could at least allow the fishing club to host their Sunday events. I told her flatly, after the threats, fines, and trespassing, "No, your fishing club is officially evicted." When I told the HOA that their fishing club was officially evicted from the lake, I meant every word, and I knew they weren't going to take it lightly. The very next morning, I noticed a few members of the fishing club standing on the far side of the lake, just staring toward my dock like they couldn't believe what was happening. They had spent years treating the lake as their personal property, setting up exclusive fishing events, kicking off teenagers who just wanted to paddle around, and even telling neighbors when they could or couldn't use their waters. The irony? They didn't own an inch of it. But now, tables had turned. The biggest portion of the lake belonged to me. And after being fined, insulted, and trespassed against, I decided it was time to take back what was mine. Not out of spite, but to send a message. I put up the first sign. I ordered professional-looking, private property, no trespassing signs and had them installed around my section of the lake. Each one had a bold warning. Violators will be prosecuted. Some of the neighbors saw me doing it and raised their eyebrows, unsure of what was happening. A few even came over cautiously, asking if everything was okay. When I explained the situation and showed them my legal documents, the reaction was priceless. One elderly neighbor, Mr. Tompkins, shook his head and said, "About time someone stood up to those HOA bullies." He then told me how the fishing club once tried to stop his grandson from launching a toy sailboat, claiming rules were rules. This wasn't about community anymore. It had become about power and ego. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about a boat or a lake. It was about standing your ground when someone tries to take what's yours. Quietly at first, then confidently, and eventually with the full force of the truth behind you. And now, every time someone asks me about the lake, I smile and say, "Yeah, that's mine. Want to go for a paddle?"